Hello everyone, it's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland reviewer, and I'm here to review the new Stephen King adaptation, The Dark Tower. Now, I haven't actually read these novels before, but I know a lot of people really love these novels and were very excited when the set series of novels was going to get its first ever film adaptation. And how did it turn out? It was fine, I guess. Unfortunately, fine in this situation is kind of really disappointing because there's so many cool things they probably could have done with this and just settled for a pretty forgettable just movie and disappointing. Now, this was directed by Nikolai Arcel, and this film went through a lot of reshoots, a lot of bad test screenings, all kinds of hecticness behind the scenes that kept getting this film pushed back. And you can really tell. In terms of the storytelling, it feels so rushed and trying to cram so many things into this hour and 35-minute film that it seems like important world building things are just tossed out in tiny lines of dialogue, and the pacing is just so quick that it just keeps going, glossing over so many different things, and it's just like boom without you even getting a chance to just sit, breathe, and like take in what's going on here. And that's a big issue. And in terms of how this film, the tone is pretty consistent, but it hints at there's fantasy, there's science fiction, there's horror, and hints at all those things, but doesn't really dig into any of them, and kind of comes off as a pretty generic action adventure film with really cool gun techniques and gun skills and stuff like that. And there's so many interesting things here that it really doesn't showcase, and they don't take that and really plug it in and really make this film feel unique and different, because there's signs of that in this film, but they just don't go too deep into it. And things are glossed over so quickly and move so quickly that you really don't get hit those emotional peaks that you're supposed to throughout this film. There's maybe one or two parts of this film that you actually feel the impact of what's going on here, and overall it's kind of just and they don't take enough time to really flesh out everything for you to get really invested. So you're just skating across the thin ice that is this movie. Now, the production design is really cool, and the costumes gives a very distinct look, and this world is really cool, and that's why I should have been able to discover it a bit more and actually get to live through it a little bit more than what this film gives it to do. And in terms of the special effects, some of them were good. Nothing was great. The special effects were good, and then there's terrible ragdoll effects during fight sequences that looked awful and looked unfinished. And it's just like, oh, this is an expensive movie. You didn't really put enough effort into that part of the movie, and that kind of takes you out of the film. Now, the cinematography is done by Rasmus Vedebeek, and it's very striking. The shots are really cool, and how they bring this world to life is really cool. And you also spend a lot more time on Earth than I would have expected. But the glimpse that you do get of this world are really cool and really fleshed out with how the camera works and how things are framed. It makes it look striking, and you see this bleak world with the color palettes of everything, that this was a once lived in, thriving world that's now kind of desolate. Now, in terms of the writing, four screenwriters, too many cooks in the kitchen, too much stuff trying to cram into this movie, trying to have all this setup and explanation of things, and the exposition is just done in such a terrible way. And honestly, I was sitting in the movie thinking about different ways they could have introduced things in a more visual way where you didn't have to blah 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 all the time, but that's what they do, just throwing it right out at you. And Roland, our gunslinger, and the Man in Black are two cool characters in this film, and then you have Jake, the young kid, and he has his issues, but basically everyone else in this film are either extremely flat or completely pointless, and exposition spewing things that it's just like, and things are just run over so quickly, and I keep reiterating that it's like glossed over characters, just like, bye, okay, you were there, all right. And you kind of get lost in a lot of it because it's like you're just kind of thrown in with like little tiny lines thrown in there in the screenplay to be like, hey, this is why this is a thing. Hey, this is why this is a thing. Okay, take your word for it. And it's not done in an interesting or creative way. And that's really disappointing. And this film's not really deep. They don't deal with too many really dark, like deep themes that this story seems like it would deal with, so it doesn't really hit any like subtext or anything like that. Now the music is done by Junkie XL, and I love Junkie XL, and he does a really good job. He makes a nice score. It's not super memorable like a Mad Max Fury Road soundtrack, but the score he does for this film works really well and elevates scenes which are much needed, because how the story was told and how it rushes through kind of leaves off some of the real impact, and the music kind of gets you into the scenes on quite a few occasions, and that's really important. Now the performances, Tom Taylor I thought did a nice job as Jake the Kid in this film, but the real stars are Idris Elba and Matthew McConaughey. And Idris Elba is intense, and you can feel there's something underneath that is part of his character, and he's haunted by and trying to keep things at an arm's length and trying to forget what used to be his life, and now this fiery passion of revenge against the Man in Black. And Matthew McConaughey brings something very interesting to the Man in Black, who, for all intents and purposes, kind of is pretty flat in terms of like, I just want to rule because I want to rule evil ways, yeah. Except then Matthew McConaughey brings some charm and charisma to certain sequences where you could just tell he's enjoying doing these sick, twisted things to people, and there's like that darker. That's honestly one of the darkest part of this film is that, and probably the most interesting character trait out of anybody in this film is that he has this interest in inflicting his power over people and how he actually enjoys it, and McConaughey really sells that. And I can see why he passed on something like Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 to do something like this with his role. Unfortunately, the movie didn't turn out so great. Now, I guess how I'd summarize this with my it factor. Does this movie have the it factor? It has so many hints of being it. Like such cool sci-fi, fantasy, horror, action mix that could have been such a cool, unique film, and then squanders it and doesn't really take the steps it needed to really make an awesome movie. So where that leaves The Dark Tower, I'm going to give The Dark Tower a C minus.